This is lesson 2 of 6, take 1. In the last lesson, we began to talk about the consummate artist, and this is an emphasis on arts and media. We're looking at the brooding of God and what that produces in the light of artists and in the light of bringing the invisible into the visible realm. True creativity is that which contemplates bringing the invisible into the visible realm. All of us were thoughts in His mind before we became children in our mother's womb. Scripture indicates that in each instant, the child in the womb is a hands-on creation of God. Let me read this from Psalm 139, verse 14 to 17. I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are thy works, and that my soul knoweth right well. My substance was not hid from thee, when I was made in secret and curiously wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. Thine eyes did see my substance, yet being unperfect, and in thy book all my members were written, which in continuance were fashioned, when as yet there was none of them. How precious also are thy thoughts unto me, O God! How great is the sum of them! We need to begin to look at some of this and realize that we were thoughts before we were ever anything in the visible realm. God giving form to His thoughts concerning you, bringing you from the invisible into the visible realm. The Bible is very clear when it says that I was chosen in Him before the foundation of the world. That is a whole dimension of theology that just needs to be done somewhere else. But we need to realize that we were in the invisible realm, in God's mind, His thoughts. There's an old song that talks about when He was on the cross, I was on His mind. But even before that, in eternity past, we were thoughts in His mind. The way God has done this is a pattern that is followed even though we may not realize it. Thoughts, ideas, concept, music, and inventions are first ideas, or an idea or is either drawn as a picture, written as a concept in either fiction or nonfiction, or like some of the great classical pieces of sculpture, formed and shaped by the artist. But it all came out of his or her invisible realm first. And there's a story of Leonardo da Vinci, I believe it is, when he was doing a carving, and they said, what are you doing? He said, I see David in there, and I'm releasing him. I'm freeing him from that piece of marble that he used. With God, there was in His mind a pinnacle or crowning piece of His creation that He had in His thoughts. How God approached His creation or invention and how He went about it is important in understanding the creative mind. If I was made in His image, I also have a creative mind. The difference is this: my creative mind is focused usually on one type of art or one type of creative ability. His is the full spectrum of all types of art. He could have spoken everything into being at once, but He didn't, because it was a progressive unveiling of Himself, depicting a pattern of the development of the creative mind. In studying creation, we get a glimpse into the creative mind, how it works, how it functions, and how it comes from the invisible into the visible realm. Every step He took in creation unveils something that has its parallel in the creative mind of man. Now, unless I understand the mind of the artist, I will misinterpret his art or motives for creating the expression of art, no matter what form it takes. He had the thought in his mind to create man, but that's not what he did first. He set a context. And often the artist has to set the context before he brings forth the centerpiece, that which was the focus from the very beginning of his art. God's Spirit, or the soul of God, moved or brooded over the face of the void and the chaos. This step could be likened to spending time through what and how the thoughts in his mind could be brought from the invisible into the visible realm. In what we have seen so far, the brooding or hovering was an expression of the emotion of God toward his creation. One of the things that we have to capture if we're going to move in a creative mind is that, number one, God is emotional. Some people may not like that. They may have a struggle with that. But every artistic expression comes out of an emotion. In Star Trek, The Next Generation, there's a character called Data, who is a created robot with the ability to think. But when he tried to do art, he could not do an impressionist. He could not do a number of things. And when he played an instrument, it was technically perfect, but without proper emphasis. Why? Because it takes emotion to bring forth true art. And so God is emotional, whether we like it or not. He spoke into the darkness and chaos. He said, "Let there be light." Light was needed to do anything else. He divided the light from the darkness, so God set the parameters. And often in doing art of any kind, there's a parameter set. We outline what we want to do. Sometimes an artist will sketch on the canvas what he wants to paint. And then he'll paint. He doesn't paint by numbers. I would have to paint by numbers, then it wouldn't work. Because that's not the type of artist I am. I never stay within the lines. Well, we won't go there, will we? Okay. God set the parameters. He had to, because without that, there would have been no contrast or definition. God created darkness in order that there might be contrast and definition. He had to create the darkness. True black, again, we want to emphasize, true black must be made separately. Black is authoritative and powerful because black can evoke strong emotions. Too much black can be overwhelming. Black represents a lack of color, the primordial void or emptiness. It is a classic color for clothing, possibly because it makes the wearer appear thinner and more sophisticated. This is a quote from a website that defines black. Black is an entity unto itself. It is not a combination of anything else, in contrast with light, which we'll look at in a few minutes. In 1 John 1 and 5, "This then is the message which we have heard of him, and declare unto you that God is light, and in him is no darkness at all." Psalm 139 verse 12, "Yea, the darkness hideth not from thee, but the night shineth as day. The darkness and light are both alike unto thee." He is light, so all he had to do was command it to come into the chaos and give it form in this new context. In other words, God formed the light. The word form there is the same word we'll see that he used to form man from the dust of the earth. There was power, there was pressure, but the light was already there. He was the light. He just had to bring form and shape to it. And he began his creation by forming light. Day one of creation was a day of setting boundaries by contrast. Within light, 7 major colors are contained. This is only seen when that light is shone through a prism that divides the light into those colors. True light has all the 7 colors of the rainbow. Is God the prism? The 3-sided transparent glass structure through which he who is light shone, producing the 7 colors of the rainbow? Good question. I'm not going to answer that for you. Okay. Therefore, in God forming the light first, he actually was laying out his color palette, even though it was hidden in the white light. Very interesting concept, and if we had time to go into that in depth, it would be powerful. Now, in dividing the light from the darkness, he set up the contrast. Remembering that darkness and light are alike to him, therefore they were separated for our sakes, not for his sake. In Psalm 139, verse 12, which we've already quoted before, but let's read it again. Yea, the darkness hideth not from thee, but the night shineth as the day. The darkness and light are both alike unto thee. So God had to make a contrast. He had to bring the contrast into the visible realm in order for us to see it. In doing this, he created time and day and night. At this point, I'm not sure whether the time was a 24-hour day or a work accomplished based of time. One of the things when we look at time in Scripture and when we apply it to our lives, it doesn't have a chronological sense. It has a work done sense. And there are people who say, well, it was a 24-hour day or it was a 1,000-year day. That's not the issue. The work done is the important thing. There are some works of art that can be done in a very short time. In fact, I've seen them in about 15 minutes. I've seen them bring art, and obviously he saw a picture in his mind because this guy was in a mall and he painted a country scene. So this came out of his mind, out of his memory, out of his invisible realm, and he brought it into the visible realm. That whole line of thought is an awesome line of thought. All of you have an invisible realm. Do we want it brought out? Well, we won't go there. Remember, he is also creating definition and dictionary for us. He's creating the dictionary and definition from which all other languages draw their definition. Now, I don't know whether it was English or Hebrew or some other language. It depends on who you talk to, what the opinion is. He is inventing the colors from which all palettes will draw their paints and definition of color. Where did it come from? It came from internal. It was an internal, invisible thing that was already in his spirit and in his mind. And all of this was coming out of his imagination and his heart. That's it. To me, that's almost that's an awesome thought. That out of his invisible realm came all that we see. It was already in his invisible realm. And in order for us to step into and manifest the Creator, which I believe is the answer to evolution, it is not argument in Scripture. Because if an atheist doesn't believe Scripture, how in the world are you going to convince him that God is the Creator? Number one, he doesn't believe in God. But if out of our innermost being there begins to flow the invisible realm and it becomes manifest, we become the evidence against evolution. Let me say that again. We as a people become the evidence against evolution. In Job 38:7, when the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy, he created all these things, but none of them were yet named. There's been discovered a relationship between music and color. So when he brought all these colors out of him, it says here that when the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy, there was a music that came out of the color. Well, that in itself is whole nother dimension. Now, this being true, it's important to realize that as well as that, not only was the color palette defined at this time, but the musical scale was defined at this time. Although there has always been music in the heavens, God was setting the stage so his will could be done on earth and was bringing out of his being that which was needed. Remember, we're on plan A, we're not on plan B. The fall of man did not interrupt God's plan. If Jesus was the lamb slain before the foundation of the world, then we are still on plan A. God is still bringing out of his invisible realm a manifestation of himself. Out of the heart the mouth speaks. As God moved in creating the earth, it was an unveiling of what was in his heart. In Luke 6:45 it says, a good man out of the good treasure of his heart brings forth that which is good. What did God say at the end of each day of creation? What does it say? And God saw that it was good. So what we're seeing is a manifestation in creation of the goodness of the heart of God. And therefore, when he brought forth that color palette, he said it was good. And it says, an evil man out of the evil treasure of his heart bringeth forth that which is evil. For out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh. Eventually, what's in your heart is going to come out your mouth. The arts of all types come out of the heart of man. An artist will produce externally what is in his heart and spirit internally. Let me say this. I am very sure that there are almost innumerable people out in the world that have no idea of what their artistic ability is. In fact, they probably think they don't have any because they can't draw or they can't paint. But I believe that if we're made in the image of God, every one of us has an artistic side that needs to be discovered. It may not be our main feature, but it needs to be discovered. And of course, art is an expression of something deep within. God said that it was good. And God never lies. So this color palette that God produced, this power of word that God emphasized, all of these things were good. He hasn't even got to making man yet. Okay? God brought the good out of himself and manifested it in the visible realm. Now, on the PowerPoint I'm using, we have a long definition of good, but we need to see that it includes multiple things. One of the things that says, good as an adjective in the wildest sense. In other words, let your mind go of all the good that you know. The wildest sense. And that's what he was saying. Or could he have been saying, this is wild? Or in language today, this is cool. I really like this. I'm excited about what's coming out of my spirit and my internal. God said it was beautiful, which is another word used to define the original word. In fact, it has the sense of God was having a party or to making merry. It pleased his heart. It was precious to him. It even has within it the definition that could be used, wealth. God said this is wealth. What is in you in the invisible can manifest the wealth of God. That means we're going to have to put aside money as being the source and realize that what we have inside is more valuable than anything else. God said it was good. God said it was good. God says what is in your invisible realm that he put there, that he wants to bring out into the invisible realm, in the realms of art, all the arts, is good. We need to capture this. Okay.